Hey, thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste, and I have a really special guest I'm so excited about. Can you introduce yourself to my audience?
Oh, good morning, Celeste. My name is Deborah Smith-Pressley, and I am the CEO of the Garrett Presley Autism Resource Center and a happy mom and wife and community activist.
Yes, and people, if you're listening to this on audio, check her out on YouTube. She's beautiful, bright spirit. So I'm so excited to share her story. I met Miss Deborah prior to me doing general mental health. I was really passionate about autism because my son is autistic, and I really, went through a lot when I adopted him because there was like not a lot of services, and I found out about Miss Deborah. So I want to learn about your journey with creating this autism center because it's so amazing, which I'll talk about at the end, just to kind of plug, the ways in which you've really helped my family and I. Even just this summer during the pandemic, there was a program online. They have beautiful artwork that they created, but everything is amazing. So you have a son who is autistic. Can you share people a little bit about that journey of finding out the diagnoses and what that was like for you and your family?
Absolutely. So I want to say, I'm so happy to be here and happy to serve the community and the many families that have individuals on the autism spectrum, because it's all about family. And I want to share my family story with you. My son Garrett is a beautiful individual. When he was born, he went through the typical milestones of any other child, except for he lost language. So Garrett would be able to put a sentence together like, I want a cookie. And that length of the sentence went from I want a cookie to want cookie. So we kept telling the pediatricians that Garrett wasn't speaking too much, but they just said it's okay because boys talk slower, or it takes a while for them to be more verbal than girls. But we continued to notice that Garrett wasn't speaking. And I noticed it one day when I took him to preschool. I passed another mother with her child, and the child was talking to the mom and they were chit-chatting away. So I put Garrett in the back seat of the car. You know how moms have those car seats in the back and they've got the mirror up in the front. They can look at the mirror and see their kid. So I said, Garrett, did you like school today? And Garrett just smiled. He has a very pleasant personality as a child and still now. He just smiled. I said, Garrett, do you like your new teacher? And he just smiled. And I said, what's your favorite thing to do? And Garrett just smiled. So I knew that something was lacking because Garrett was pleasant. He was happy, but he just wasn't conversing. So many times we were not told that Garrett was on the autism spectrum until we went to a medical facility in Boston. And we had the psychologist and a team of people that had evaluated Garrett. And they told us that Garrett has autism. And they began to explain a little bit about autism. And I remember just swallowing and saying, okay. So they kind of like thought they were shaking us. They said, Mr. and Mrs. Pressley, did you hear what we said to you? Garrett has autism. It is a lifelong, disease or disability, and he'll never ever speak, and he'll never ever get better.
How 2 questions. How old was he and what year was this?
Garrett was 5 years old. Okay. So Garrett was born in 1989. Garrett was 5 years old. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 5. And that is a very late diagnosis. And when they told us, I don't know what they expected us to do, but we did comprehend what they said. I said a prayer, and my husband spoke out, and he said, okay, now tell us the best services the best school, the best resources, the best treatment for Garrett. So we had to kind of like shake the therapist and the evaluators and the social worker and the doctor, the medical doctor, to say, okay, we heard you. Now moving forward, what can we do to help him? And I began to learn everything about autism. I traveled all over the state. I went to Springfield, Worcester, Rhode Island, Connecticut. I went to Ohio. And then I learned a lot about autism from professors coming in to universities that had autistic children. I immersed myself with all the knowledge, taught my husband, and began to look for things for Garrett, which led me to the community, which had nothing, absolutely nothing. So 5 years old, that started our journey.
Wow, that's beautiful. And you know, one thing, Miss Deborah, I love about what took place is kind of like the way it was presented to you. Unfortunately, if you weren't a go-getter and somebody that's super determined, those words would have just struck you, and you would have just ran with that. And I think that's my fear. You know, with a lot of parents who have children that have special needs, or you know, not as typical. You know, is that depending on who their provider is or what's being told, my fear is that they will let those words be the kid's story.
Yes.
My Isaiah, he's my biological cousin, but at 5 he was screaming and they wanted to put him on medication and all these things. Luckily, I'm a therapist and I knew like I can actually put things in place for him.
Yes.
And then that's when I became really passionate for other parents, because I recognize a lot of parents don't know other than what the expert is telling them.
Right.
Can you share how that motivated you to really work with parents, just knowing, I know everybody doesn't have the capacity to kind of go different places and things like that, but it's like you knew there was more for Garrett than what they told you.
Yes, it's true. And I'm so glad you mentioned it, because as a mom and as a dad, but particularly as a mom, I want everyone to think of that's your child. And you have to put up a demeanor of being a warrior. And you're going to fight for your child and your child's life. And you do not have to take the word of anyone, I don't care who they are, that says this is it, this is the way it's going to be. Because I looked at Garrett and I said, I heard what you said, but my God said something different. And I want to tell you my experience of being very afraid, very frightened, because I didn't know what was wrong with Garrett. And I understand parents that are sometimes in denial. They will think there's nothing wrong with them, or they might hear from someone that says they'll grow out of it, or they may have someone that punishes the child because the child doesn't like loud noises, or the child might not be able to comprehend what they're saying. They may be very attention deficit, like very anxious. But the thing that I want everyone to capture is there's always room for improvement. There is always room for a better day. If you have an illness or a disability, there are ways that you can become treated and become functional. So we don't have to I didn't spend so much time trying to figure out, how did Garrett get autism? Where did it come from? That came later, but it was to take Garrett as an individual and figure out what are his strengths, and then what are the things that he's challenged with. One of the best things I could do for my child as a mom with a son with autism was I gave him a huge vocabulary. So I would put him on my hip and carry him around, and I would go to the backyard and I would go flower, leaf, window. So I know now that autistic people think in pictures. So if you say we're going to the movies, they're actually picturing going to the movies. So I would take Garrett around and I would label everything: pen, telephone, computer. And Garrett has limited language, verbal skills, but I think it's because what I did with him early as a child. He understands directions. He understands different things. He can visualize places that he went 10 years ago, and he can memorize everything. So as a mom, I just infiltrated everything with vocabulary into both of my children, because I have a daughter and she's not on the autism spectrum, but I treated them both the same, and I just I allowed him to touch things, to see things, to be very mobile. I enrolled him in gymnastics and swimming pool classes. And it's frightening, but once you know what the situation is, there's always a better day. And it's your job. You might not like what I'm saying to you, but it's your job to make a life better for your child.
Yes. And what Miss Deborah said, Garrett was an individual. She treated him like an individual. And unfortunately, sometimes, especially with our people in the Black community, they're lumped into a box. And not like, if you add on socioeconomic status, if you don't have money to go to these different experts, you're lumped into a box. And so you used what you had available to you, right? Like what Ms. Deborah talked about, talking and having him look at different things and giving him vocabulary. That's beautiful. And I want parents to know, and I understand the stressors that come with being a parent. So obviously Ms. Deborah had to take care of herself to be able to provide that to Garrett. But tell people a little bit about why community is important during this process. Because for me, finding community in your center, my son was 5 years old. I remember I used to be so embarrassed when he would scream. Miss Deborah doesn't care. Miss Deborah's just like, she doesn't care who's looking. And I learned so much from her. And I immersed myself in learning about autism. But I remember my husband would say, listen, we got to do it. We got to say no now, because we're going to be doing it for the rest of our lives, right? So tell people about how community is important and why it's important not to worry so much about what other people are thinking when you're trying to help your child.
Yeah, it takes a lot. It takes a lot, but it can be done. And I'm so glad that you said that, because I live in Mattapan, and my neighborhood is a community. So all the stores, the car washes, the cleaners, your neighbors, the parks, the grocery store, that's our community. And a lot of people that have autistic children or adults feel isolated. So they're embarrassed. They don't want to go out because somebody might have a temper tantrum in the supermarket, and we are so judgmental of everyone. So I can understand the fear of someone looking at you saying, look at her, she's crazy, or can't she take care of that child? This is the real world. And I'm sorry, but in 2021, I think if a mother or a father brought their autistic kid out and they're screaming, everybody would look at them like they're crazy. So everyone has heard of autism. They say they know what it is, but they don't know what it is. And I have to say this, it's your life. If you live your life according to what somebody else thinks, you're always going to be in a box. You're always going to be isolated. We are human. We cry, we laugh, we have excitement, we have fears, and we have anxieties. Everybody has that. And if there's somebody that doesn't have that, they're not real. They're not human. So GPAR, the Garrett Pressley Autism Resource Center, says to everybody, we are real people. We live in this community. These are the sad things that we have. These are the beautiful things that we have. And these are the hard things that we have. If I was to live my life according to what someone else thinks of me and my son and my family, I would be nowhere. So I had to be bold. I had to be bold in my faith, bold in my spirit, bold in that's my child. Those are my children. So I educated the public. I'm not afraid to come out and say, I had a bad day today. I feel low self-esteem. So I'll talk about self-esteem. And I want people with autism to know that they belong. They're a part of the community. So we go to Franklin Park. We go to Pope John Park. We go to Norfolk Park. We go anywhere, Fenway Park. We go anywhere because we are a part of the community. We belong in the community. And don't be embarrassed because this is what autism looks like. And if you don't know, we'll educate you because everybody is different. So whether you have autism or not, my show, Facebook Live, every Saturday, we talk about a topic. As adults, we suffer with some of the same things that people on the spectrum suffer with. Yep. Let's say I'm feeling sad, feeling anxious, having low self-esteem, not having confidence, being excited. Maybe you have a talent that you haven't tapped into. That's what we talk about with the autism program that I represent. And I just want you to say, remember this, live for you. When you live for you, it's freedom. You are free to live for you and your family.
Yes. And, that message is something I speak about a lot. It's like, we can't spend so much time worrying about what people think. And luckily for me growing up, that's something that I never really struggled with. And that's probably why I've been able to keep moving. And so when I see people struggling with that, I love your analogy of saying, if you're going to keep worrying about the people, you're living in a box. And in a box, you're very limited in what you can do. And so that means we're choosing to limit ourselves based off of what Miss Deborah or somebody else thinks. You're not being fair to yourself. So I love that so much. And so we understand your story and what happened with Garrett and how you helped really shape his life. And like Miss Deborah said, 5 is a pretty late age. Actually, can you just share with people if they know there's something going on with their child, what would you suggest they do to keep pushing forward with getting more, because I wanted to touch on that.
That's a huge component. We call it the medical component. And there is a lack of resources, particularly for people of color. You're not always going to get the best doctor, the best dentist. And we have a resource book. It's like a medical directory. When a parent gets a diagnosis, sometimes it's not always correct. Sometimes it could be written in a way that doesn't give the full diagnosis. Let me explain to you what I mean. I have seen some children get a diagnosis of a disorder with communication when they really had autism. So why did that disorder of communication disorder come out over autism? Because if you have a diagnosis of autism, if you're going to a school system, the school system will be able to provide the services that's most appropriate for your child. Okay. If you, and to the letter of the law, the school system should be meeting 100% of that child's needs. But if you have a diagnosis that's a little bit different from autism, that's subcentral underneath that, you might be getting just like speech therapy, maybe not behavioral applied behavioral analysis, maybe not sensory integration, OT. So it lessens the services. So I must say, it's like shopping in a supermarket. You're going to get better meats maybe if you live in a different zip code. Let's say my zip code might be Needham or Newton or Wellesley, or Maynard. I'm going to get different. I have a lot of resources afforded to me. Let's say it's 02126 or 02119, Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. The resources are very limited. So my doctors and my evaluations, my facilities, all my medical resources are limited. So I always advise families to make sure you have a good evaluator, someone that's going to be able to evaluate but give recommendations of what is best for your child. Okay, because what is good for Garrett might be a little slightly different than what's better for Isaiah.
Right.
And there are different levels of autism. That's why they call it a spectrum.
Yeah.
And I hate when somebody says, well, that they're high functioning. So they think that because they're high functioning, they say they're high functioning, that they're more acceptable or will be more included. That's not always the case, because you can have someone that's nonverbal and they can write a book, or they're the most best employee you could ever have. So there's so much to autism that I have to say, but the resources, you need to look for the right resources. And that's why we're called the Garrett Pressley Autism Resource Center.
Yes.
I was a teacher, an administrator, a state official that talked about special education, gifted and talented, a whole bunch of things. So I'm happy to use my experiences towards working with the families. One-on-one, because I know who you are. I'm from where you are. I work with all individuals on the spectrum.
And for people, just for a point of reference, because a lot of people listen to me across the country, some of the Needham and the zip codes, when she was talking about that, it's people in a higher socioeconomic status. The other ones like Roxbury, Dorchester, more Black and brown people, we live there, and the socioeconomic status looks different. There was even a article that came out that said, depending on what zip code you're in, your life expectancy, right? So it's like environmental. There's so much. Boston, our city is very like segregated, and the dollar amount, it looks different. So unfortunately, just because the dollar amount looks differently, just because we're in a different zip code, should not mean that our life expectancies looks different or we don't have those resources. And I know, there's a lot of light being shed on that and a lot of advocacy. But when I think about Miss Deborah's history, it's like when I always tell people, like, God gives us what we need, or things are working in our favor. And I think about your background, and it makes so much sense how and why you do what you do. But you was already like set up for that. And the amount of families Isaiah we came to Miss Deborah when he was about 7. He's 17 now. And she's watched him flourish and grow. And so like, it's been pretty and she's been doing this before me and Isaiah came. So the amount of families that she's helped, I've spoken on her platform a few times. She has programs for parents. But tell people, so we know why you created Garrett Pressley Resource Center, but what was the setup like? And just for people that, are thinking about creating their own, I know it wasn't an easy, right. Oh, look, I just want to create the center. You had to do a lot of footwork. So share with people what that looked like for you.
Okay. So for me, it was like climbing Mount Everest. And if anyone knows what Mount Everest is, it's a huge mountain. So I searched for different resources for my son. So if I took him to the YMCA, they said, sure, he can join, but what is autism? So I had to use an elevator speech to get Garrett in, like the gymnastics class or the swimming class. So it started by building resources for him to go into the community. And then I went to see my city council members, and I went to see my state legislators. And at the time, they said, "You're the only parent that came to us to talk to us about autism." And I educated them about autism and how we did not have access to our community. And we're voters and we live in the community. So that helped a lot. And it got so rambunctious that I traveled to like Natick. There was another parent that had an autistic daughter, and she created a library in her basement. And I said, I'm going to go back to Mattapan, my community, and I'm going to create the same thing that she did. So I started with a library. Someone from the local newspaper interviewed me and my husband at our kitchen area, and they publicized that article. Then people called me from the community and they said, we should have something for people with autism. So one person that joined me is the name of Evelyn Fields. She is a aide in the classroom. She works with autistic children. She's been on my board for about 20 years. And because the people called in that read the newspaper article, I said, you know what? I'm going to bring everything here in my community. I'm going to teach all the children with autism the same way I teach my children. And you know what? We're going to live our best life possible because we're going to have lots of fun. So I scratched my head and I said, how come I think I'm a successful mom? What makes me successful with our family? And these things came to me. You have a roof over your head, which is shelter. You have food to eat, which is brought to us by our jobs. You have employment. Garrett needs to work one day. What can you do to build his career and employment? We have fun as a family. We would go to the movies. We've been traveling on the airplane. We've been to Jamaica, Florida. The family time together is about love. So I said, I know what? And I taught my kids social skills. Bing. So I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach social skills. So if my kids feel awkward being in a crowd of people or going to an event, I teach them how to say, hello, my name is Isaiah, and give a strong handshake. I teach them, we're going to the movies. We're going to sit in our seats. We're going to, buy our tickets. We're traveling. We're going to see the movie theater. And I gave them the ability to choose. So I write 3 or 4 movies on a screen, on a piece of paper, put it up on the projection. And I would say, take a vote. And I said, I know what? I'm going to teach them advocacy, self-advocacy. You are who you are. You need to like who you are. And you tell people, this is who I am. I'm good at this, not so good at that. I gave them the ability to be their self-advocacy. And we do it with fun. And you mentioned socioeconomical differences. If I go to a supermarket in Newton, I'm going to see better and finer fruits and vegetables than I do see in my community. I'm sorry, I'm just saying. So I wanted to build a healthy individual. So we teach cooking. We're associated with the Urban Farming Institute, which is on my street, across the street. We get fruits, vegetables. I taught them fitness. We do fitness every day. And the Farming Institute gave us an opportunity to learn cooking lessons in their kitchen in the farmhouse. So I want a great life for my individuals and my families. And what does that mean? It means happy, healthy, wholesome, fun-loving environments. And that's what I want to give back to all of my families.
I love it. And I promise you, Miss Deborah is not lying. The kids learned yoga, the help, the cook, everything. Before the pandemic, my husband and I, it's like Miss Deborah could be like, hey, I need this, or tech, like we're there. As long as I'm in town, I'm there. Because she gives so much. And even when I would take my son, and she not, if you're in the Boston area, not just autism, but if special needs, I have another son who's not autistic, but he's in the program as well and has learned all of these social skills. Shoot, some of us adults need to be learning these social skills.
Social skills can take you a long way.
Yes. Yeah, they learn how to speak up, because as parents, I have a capacity on like what I do. I don't work with kids. I'm not a teacher. I work with adults. So watching her with my kids helped me implement some of those things at home as well, and just having conversations. And then even with the pediatricians, and I would tell them about the program, and they would be so amazed at all of the things that's available, because typically children with autism, there's not a lot of like services, and it doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum. I don't know what kind of magic Ms. Deborah has, but they're all together, and Ms. Deborah knows everybody's in check. And I promise the environment is huge, right? Like it matters for my son, because his mom did not get any services. So he was all over the place, and they thought he would have to go into a program. And I worked with him over the summer, and everyone loves him. And you ask Miss Deborah, he's a whole different person now. And it was hard, but I'm grateful for what happened and how I was able to do this, because I can really help other parents and empower them to like stay the course, in which Miss Deborah has been doing as well.
It's amazing, because the word that I want everyone to remember is transition. So everybody transitions into a different age group. You're 8, then you're 14, then you're 20, and before you know it, you're full-grown adult. So when you have autism, you're transitioning just like everybody else is. Yeah. So if you can remember the way it was for you when you were a teenager, the same thing applies to them. If you can remember how you wanted to have a friend, like a girlfriend or a boyfriend, the same thing applies to them. It's about being included in the community. Who doesn't want to be included and accepted? Everybody does. And it's high time that we understand this. Mm-hmm. There's something else that you mentioned that brought to my mind. I can't quite remember now what it was, but I know what it is. I had to transition myself. Mm-hmm. So I was a mom, always am a mom. I was a wife. I am a wife. I had to become a huge businesswoman. So just as my kids were transitioning, I had to sell and promote my Autism Resource Center. And many people don't really understand what it is that I do. And I keep on telling them it's social skills. We teach social skills, and everybody can use social skills. My kids are in my program as young as 10 years old. I go up to like 30 plus. I have a lot of teenagers. The reason why I can blend the kids together is because social skills is something that everybody needs and needs to learn how to do. I also have situation services where I look at your educational plan, or I look at your adult plan, and I advise you what to do, what not to do. We also have parent support groups, and we have experts that talk to you about a wide variety of things. One thing I'm proud of is our summer program. We had a violence intervention segment in violence prevention, and that was done by Kim and Ron Odom, who lost a son to violence. Had nothing to do with the situation. He was shot and killed at the age of 13. But I fear for many of our kids, because if they're stopped by the police or they're bullied, like a lot of them are, they need to know what to do when they see a dangerous situation taking place, what to do, who to tell, who to speak up. If they're confronted by the police, they need to know how to respond. Not that all of us know how to respond, but someone with autism, a police officer may not recognize it. A medical professional may not recognize it. A firefighter, doctor or medical person might not recognize it. So there's so much to be said and done. But I have the hardest time getting funding for my program. And I don't know if it's they don't know that we do all these things, but we have
I'm gonna know now.
success stories, huge success stories, because everybody is important. Everybody is a respectable human being brought on this earth, and they have a gift.
And Miss Deborah was able to make a pivot, right? Because it's so, and I want you to share what that was like, because nobody planned for the pandemic, but all of Miss Deborah's programs was literally in person. She made time. She was there. She brought the food, like everything. She did everything. The pivot happened. I would have been like, okay, I'm gonna take a little break. Nuh-uh, not Miss Deborah. Miss Deborah was online. And the summer program, I wanted to pull out these books for people watching on YouTube. These are two books that she provided throughout the summer, canvas for the painting class. I mean, even though we couldn't meet in person, she's been creating a community online, because when she just talked about transition, she realized, like, you know what, life doesn't stop. So can you share with people, because I feel like your story is powerful, the way you operate is powerful, and people would benefit from like understanding how it's important to kind of accept and just like make a pivot regardless of what's happened, whether you have a child with autism or not. I think this is an important thing that you have figured out how to do.
Yes. Thank you so much for saying that. The pandemic, COVID-19, was crushing. And I saw my individuals in a community center, face-to-face, one-on-one, and in groups of kids of 14 or more. We went swimming. We went on a treadmill. We played basketball. I taught a social skills lesson as a skit. They performed for me. I performed for them. We had a very hot cooked lunch, and everybody was eating that food like there was no tomorrow. So you could imagine when things shut down, we were shut down. So I like to say that we don't think in a box, we think in a circle. So my mind went thinking about family. How can I provide services for my individuals, even though I can't see them? So I wrote grants. The grants started with funding. Everyone received a laptop or an iPad. This way I could communicate. Some of my families were not sophisticated with technology. I taught them how to use the technology, and I knew a lot of people like Facebook. I began to get on Facebook Live. I didn't want to be, but actually I found out that was one of my gifts. Facebook Live every Saturday at 12 o'clock. Now, I would talk to my kids about a social topic. So instead of performing the social issue or a social skit, I had to turn that around to talking to them about a social topic. So let's say our social topic was how to become less angry, how to get rid of anger. I would start by talking to them and acting out a little bit, with my voice and things like that. I started writing poetry. So I've written so many poems now that after my conversation with you, I want to publish some of the poems that I've written. And the poems rhyme, and that seemed to get a kick out of it with my kids. Something very interesting appeared. I did not cook. I had someone that did my cooking for me. Actually, it was a nanny that we had with us for many years. Well, I love to eat. My kids like to eat too. So I started cooking classes. And I am now Chef Deborah. I have a mini chef CJ who cooks all the meals better than me. And all of my fans and people that follow me, they cook with me. So they get a recipe on Thursday. They go to the supermarket, get all the ingredients, and then they cook it live with me on Saturday. They love the food. You'll see a lot of our posts. I became a cooking expert, and people that didn't have anything to do with autism are tuning in, and they're cooking the healthy meals as well, and they're tasting very good. I also exercise. So I take a combination of my yoga class and my aerobics class, and we go in my living room virtually, and we do the exercises. I managed to do all these things in 1 hour, so you have to be very organized. My kids that are cooking with me, they know that I follow a step-by-step process. So they're going to be able to have the meal, because I taught them how to go step by step to create the perfect lunch or dinner for you. So I just praise God that I was able to creatively take what I do in person and put it on the virtual screen. I'm also happy that we go on Facebook and they can see me, and everything is live. You know, if I make a mistake, I say I'm sorry and I laugh at myself, and we move on, because this is life and we're living it to the fullest. And I'm so happy that I can continue to do this virtually on Facebook and on Zoom. All my families are technically inclined. And I just want to add this final note. One significant thing that happened for us during the pandemic is I spoke to a family member, and I managed to get some supplies donated to me. And the parent broke down in tears. And I had asked her, what do you need? Is there anything that you need that I don't know about? What is it that you need? It was food. Because that person couldn't work for a certain period of time. And they told me they were embarrassed, because they couldn't buy the groceries they needed. And I cried and I said, I'm going to help you. And then I didn't know how I was going to help them, but I was going to help them. Well, another company, the Guild, was donating huge boxes of vegetables, fruits, canned stuff. I mean, every week the family's got this huge box of goodies. They said, Deborah, you've been helping. Come on in. They gave us huge medical supplies. The Urban Farming Institute, there was a philanthropist, donated 3 months of $200 to families for Stop and Shop. I had a restaurant through this company, the Urban Institute, that donated meals, cooked meals. So with some of my family members are frontline workers working in the hospitals, in the nursing homes, and etc. They don't have to cook on Friday, because their meal is cooked by a restaurant and given to their family. So I became the food insecurity, no insecurity person for my families. I didn't even know I was going to do it. Still doing it now. Food, was able to supply food, computers, and tablets. And that kept us alive, kept me alive. And it just was the happiest time of my life, knowing that I could sustain our families in the community.
And I'm grateful to you for that. And just so people know, Garrett is actually a whole adult now. So everything that Miss Deborah is doing, she really loves what she's doing, right? She started it out of necessity for Garrett to have a place, right, to be included. Yes. And, you know, she could have been like, okay, Garrett, he's an adult, he's in the program now, but no, she's still doing it. And so it's really apparent that this is something that you're doing out of your heart. If people are like feeling passionate about your story and want to donate and help, like what ways could they do that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. Quite a few ways. I want to give my telephone number out there. It is 617-216-1676. And again, that's Deborah Smith-Pressley. We do have a website, and I'm just going to cite it out to you now. It's www.GPARC.autismresourcecenter.org. We are in the middle of developing a new website because Ms. Deborah has to get updated. You can find us on Facebook Live at the Garrett Pressley Autism Resource Center. I have a new video person that's putting up new videos about us. So that Facebook page is really popping, as they say, it's popping. So look us up on the website, call us on the telephone number. Celeste will give you some information. Let me just reach over here.
Mm-hmm.
This is our card. This is our logo. It has everything. Whoops. It has all the information on there. Oh boy, I'm really batting 100 here. That's what the card looks like.
Yeah.
So I think I mentioned everything. So don't forget Facebook. We are on Instagram as well. And the website and the telephone number.
And I will have this all in the show notes. I'll make sure to list this. This was amazing. I want you to give some you're just such an encouraging person. And I love how you can be vulnerable and share with people it's okay. We speak the same language. We really, have a passion for people and just want people to be themselves, whatever that looks like. As long as you're not harming anyway, being yourself is so powerful. And to get my husband on board for anything, he's always willing to. Miss Deborah, whatever Miss Deborah needs, he's there, but he's not the type to be just jumping up for anybody. So it says a lot about Miss Deborah and what she provides for my family. And I just, want to publicly thank you for so much. Every time I think about you, I get emotional because you just do everything so effortlessly, but I know you're a human. Believe me, I know that you have emotions. But everything that you the transition with Isaiah and just being able to have a place to vent. And for someone, I was 25, I felt isolated. I didn't have any friends with kids with autism. So I felt really trapped in the house. And so I took comfort in social media, and then finding you and feeling oh, I can breathe. You feel like you're suffocating, and it's very depressing. I got very depressed, and that's why I started to lean into just kind of trying to meet other parents just to be able to talk. So, so I would love to hear you end us out with some last words for people listening.
Oh, it's so much I have to say. Well, this is what I want to tell you, to begin with yourself. So I always thought I knew myself, but during the pandemic, you had a chance to really know yourself. So talk to yourself. Do you want to be happy? If you want to be happy, write the things down that will make you happy and then pursue them. Make sure they're realistic. Make sure they're realistic. And every day that you wake up, praise God for waking up, because there isn't anything that you can't do. When you put your mind to it, your heart to it, and your prayers with it, there isn't anything that you can do. So embrace your child, your family, and help them to move further, to reach their highest potential. Make yourself reach your highest potential. Whatever you do, do it with love, and do it with knowledge, because knowledge is freedom. And today, there's no excuse for you not being able to read, because you can Google anything, you can pull the information together, and you can find somebody to help you if you can't do it, and build yourself up to be strong, because when you're strong, your family's strong. But do it with a positive attitude and do it with love. If you ever need to be mentored or you ever want information, call on me. I'm not afraid to help you. There weren't many people that helped me back then, but this is a different day. I have a way of explaining things to you so that you can understand it like A, B, C, D. Okay? So don't be afraid. All you have to do is come with your best social skills, which is hello. Be friendly, smile. Can you help me? And then see how far you can fly.
I love it. Miss Deborah, one thing she's going to do is she's going to help you get empowered by taking ownership. And that's something, I think a lot of times we only get stuck in the barriers and we struggle with kind of seeing just the little things we can do, right? The little things. I think about you having Garrett on your hip, just going to the yard and saying flower, right? You didn't have to pay for that. You didn't have to pay for that. So I think sometimes we get so caught up in the barriers that we forget what we have. But the only way to do that and be there for your children is if you're there for yourself. Like that's it. That's so powerful. Yeah, go ahead.
That's number one, Celeste. You said it, and it's about the resources. So let's talk about. Have you ever done something and you didn't have the real instrument or the real tool? So you created something.
You improvised, yeah.
So be a little creative, and it's not all easy. I'm not saying it's not all easy, but prayer connect. Mothers are so, creative. Dads are creative. And I just want to say to you that we have enough stress in our life with trying to maintain the home, trying to do the job. Make sure your relationship with your partner is secure and that you work together as a team. Because if that person's not working well with you as a team, that's a whole nother conversation. And that's how I have been able to be so successful, is my husband has been a team player. And he could be a pain in a neck sometimes. But we worked as a team. And so whoever you're with, whoever's sharing your family life with, make sure that they can support you so that you can support others.
Yes, that was good. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and your time. This was amazing.
Much. One of my best families.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited for people to hear your story. And, for people listening, if you enjoy the story, share it with somebody that you love. You never know how much someone's story can help empower people and give them hope. And I just, my goal is really with this podcast is for people to have hope and not give up. I don't want people to give up.
So. No, never give up. Never give up. I have a sign over there that says, don't quit. And I look at it every day. And remember, don't forget, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Go out and get that sunshine.
Yeah. Why do you think Miss Deborah's smiling and so cheery? She makes sure to get the exercise in.
You know it.
Bye, guys.
Bye now. Bye, everybody.